When it started off, to be honest, like I was a little nervous again that Draymond was gonna like just spray the block and just be like, you know what, like, because again of the environment, because he was with not there physically, but because he was talking to Barnes and Stack, I thought he might just get too real, you know. Um, and he started off like and he cleaned it up as it went on. But at the beginning, he was coming off real cocky, and I was like, "Yo, man, I'm so glad Steph and Clay are as humble as they are because you can see how the three mesh, right? Like Draymond, all the humility that Steph and Clay show, like Draymond makes up for it. There's a level of bravado, right? There's a level of bravado and boastering with Draymond, but it's needed almost when you compare it with Steph and Clay. We need that contrast, right? But he cleaned it up real quick because he said, remember when he said, you know, I changed the game of basketball, and then he rephrased it really quick. And he goes, Steph changed the game of basketball, and I helped him do that. And then he went back and said, and I changed the game of basketball, and Steph helped me do that, right? But he kind of rephrased it. And look, he's not wrong, man. People, the haters that are going to say, well, you're just attached to the Splash Brothers, right place, right time. And there is an aspect to that, and I think he gets it. That's the difference with some of these like brash talking bravado dudes is Draymond understands that it's in part of facade, and you can see by his actions suggest that when he talks about taking the pay cut and winning, and actually when it's like he understands that there's a level to it. But where he changed the game is he turned, remember the phrase tweener? Oh, he's a tweener. He's a tweener coming out. And I just got done, you know, again, doing these classic breakdowns. I did the Antoine Jameson one a couple weeks ago, right? 51 Kobe. And remember, Antoine was the classic tweener. He wasn't quite big enough for power forward, but he wasn't a small forward. He was a tweener. And it used to be a stigma. And Draymond changed the game in the sense of he made this phrase tweener into a hybrid. Now he's just a hybrid wing. He's a positionless forward. And so that's where I think he deserves that credit. Now, would it have happened in a different situation on a different team? No, you can do that with every great athlete, really. Like if Mahomes was drafted by the Dolphins, you know, I don't know what we're talking about right now in the football, right? And so he does deserve that credit and the bolstering and the bragging, and it comes off, but it's just good cop, bad cop. And that contrast within the locker room, it wouldn't have been the same if he wasn't like that.
Yeah. But yeah, also to jump on that point, like about being the tweener, like, I mean, it's not just him, but he made it now. Before, like, people would be like, oh, you don't have a power forward. Like, how are you going to assemble the starting five? Where now it's kind of like, I just need to get the best five guys out there on the floor, and they'll guard who they have to guard, because it's not like, oh, you're the point guard. Oh, Steph can only guard Dame because, they're both point guards, so like it kind of like, I think it changed that mindset for most casual fans, of course, but then like even for some coaches who are just stuck in that old thinking of like, okay, I need to have my power forward on my power forward, like it was just, that was the way, like the mentality of how it was. And then Draymond kind of was just guarding anything and everyone. And then now like we got PJ Tucker at the 5,
He is, if you want to point to one player, and obviously it was also the coaching staff's decision, and Kerr, give him credit and stuff like that. Ron Adams, but he was the root of the switch everything defense, right? He's what enabled he and Iguodala, I believe. Like without those two playing on the 15 Warriors team in this run, the switchable thing wouldn't have come together at that time. Who's to say when and if it would have, after that? But you're right, man. You're right. And now Draymond is like an archetype, right? And I think it's cool. It's funny how you talk, Mark Jackson was roasted for the comments of Steph Curry's ruining the game, right? You go in and I hate Mark Jackson, but I know exactly what he was saying because I'm around the youth playing basketball and I get it. Kids are launching 30-footers and they don't even have their own balance. They can't even shoot a balanced jump shot. But Draymond has created like the opposite archetype, right? Where it's like, okay, if you're big enough and you play really hard and you're smart and you like do all the other things, there's a spot for you on a winning team. So that's dope. That's dope. And he should be proud of that. That being said, Look, man, the shooting is unacceptable. And people have been at me a little bit like, yo, why are you always throwing Draymond in the trade talks? You know, like I had put the little snippet of last week's episode of Rudy for Draymond, right? Why are you always so quick to throw Draymond in the trade talks? Well, one, it's pretty simple. You've got 3 stars. Draymond's always going to be the odd one out. What are you trading, one of the Splash Brothers? So like there's that off top. But then the other aspect of it is my concern of the way he's going to age out and the fact that he hasn't been able to fix his shot.
Like that's the thing. Well, they always say that like the last skill to leave you is shooting, right? So like if for him he never had it, then what's like if
how was it the first shit that left him? How was you say it's the last thing to leave you? That his shooting was the first thing to leave that nigga, man. That shit is wild. But what the thing that a big detail was that he revealed, because remember it was his mom when he went through the shooting woes. So 15, he was shooting it all right. 16 was that like 39% Luke Walton year. Right. And then it just dipped. If it was a graph, that shit just plunged. And now he's at like 26%, something nuts, man. But anyway, I remember it was his mom that was trying to defend him about his shoulder. I think he had like a minor shoulder surgery between seasons and he had a shoulder problem. And it was like, okay, it's the shoulder. But during this interview, he revealed that he had a hip problem. His hip was bothering him. And he said after the finals, he was like, damn, man, I'm glad we finished them out. He said it was after he swept Cleveland. So I'm assuming it was the first year they had Durant. And he goes, damn, I'm glad we took care of business because I don't know if I could have played. And then so he had like a minor scoping or something of his hip. And that was kind of his excuse to why he was like, I had to readjust like how I was using my hips and my shot and all that. And those that watch my breakdowns know I've always pointed out with Draymond his dip. People make fun of the backpack shot, right? His backpack shot, but it's his dip that's inconsistent and it's just not fluid. It's a violent dip and it's not consistent. And then he lacks hip extension at the end. That's why, hence the backpack joke is because his hips don't fully extend up and his torso doesn't get straight, right? You look at the textbook shot of like a Klay Thompson, chest is very straight. You eventually get to like a fully erect position. Pause. And Draymond, so that makes sense that it's a hip problem. But that being said, that was like 2017, bro. He's had time to adjust to his new hip, if you will, his new dip.
Yeah, but I mean, to be honest, he's not like before 2017. He was like lights out shooter or anything like that. He just, I mean, I don't want to sit here and say he doesn't work on it. He doesn't try it. But I mean, I just don't understand if like I'm always like I don't understand if this is your job and you can't put up 1,000 jumpers a day, like how do you not become average at it? Like just you can just become average at shooting the ball.
And then it's so frustrating to me. I've gone on my rants about this before because he only needs to shoot it in like 2 spots, the top and the corner. You got 2 money spots you got to practice. And it goes back to that Draymond is a competitor, right? That's his superpower, is his competitiveness, right? And so he's not a gym rat. He's not going to go in there and put up 1,000 shots because it's not good enough competition for him. He needs to be out there diving on loose balls and competing against someone physically. Now, you could bring somebody else in there and have him compete in the shooting, but for whatever reason, I just don't think it gets his juices flowing. And so, you're right. He's not a gym rat, but he's got to get it up.
Maybe the thing is, maybe he doesn't want to do that competition because imagine if he's trying to do that competition and he's got to play Klay and Steph. I mean, imagine you'll just lose every single time. That'll demoralize you, I think.
Right. I remember watching a shooting line of Team USA. So it was like all the forwards were like on the elbow, like taking jumpers, right, in a line. And it was like him, Melo, Paul George, and Durant. and you could just see his body language, like after he would release the shot, like, come on, come on, come on. And meanwhile, these other fools are just looking like a video game. Like, but yeah, no, I'm not saying he should be a knockdown guy, but you would think, like watching like Jason Kidd is the example I always use of a guy that became knocked down enough at spots He found spots where he could knock him down. And it's just like, if he can't get to that 35, 33% even, as he ages, it just makes me wary of, like, you know, again, how he's going to age. I guess the other, you know, the next topic on this All the Smoke podcast, if those of you listening that haven't listened, it's a must listen if you're a Warriors fan, really just a basketball fan, is, it's funny, man, because I released a YouTube video about a month ago, why Chris Paul hates Steph Curry. Okay. And it was clickbait. I'm not hate, like, that's where people fail to realize, like, no, I don't think he hates Steph Curry, but he's salty. And so, no, they don't hate each other. But if you followed along, it's clear Chris Paul feels a type of way about the Warriors and Steph Curry, man. He called Kyle Lowry before the finals and tried to give them inside information, like, this is what you got to do. You guys got to win.
Yeah. I think he's a smart guy. He's just like, he knows he's marketing. He wants to stay a State Farm, you know, agent or whatever he's doing. You know, like he knows he needs to do that to stay Chris Paul, the international spokesman. You know, so that's it's part of his game too. You know, that's why I think he was doing that with Steph Curry. I don't think he's somehow like, you know, like he's in town, he's gonna go grab drinks with the Currys or anything like that. You know.
Exactly. People, it's just funny, the internet, well, oh, no, they're boys. Like, come on, man. You know, one, it's not hate, but we all have to smile and pretend to like people in day-to-day life. Like, oh, hey, yeah, how you doing, right? Like, there's that infamous gif where Steve Kerr is, like, joking with Chris Paul, and he smiles and immediately turns around and frowns like, this motherfucker. Like, yeah. You know, but just proof point. But anyway, what I was getting at was, Draymond explained, because Matt Barnes was on those Clipper teams when the Warriors were becoming the Warriors. And it was dope to hear Draymond's insight on, he was like, Steph always thought, because they had this relationship being from North Carolina, that, you know, Chris Paul was big bro and Chris was cool. And Draymond was like, yo, I didn't really see it like that. Like Steph thought they were cool. He was like, but you could tell Chris really didn't fuck with him. And Chris was using that big brother to kind of keep him at bay. You know what I mean? He was secretly like trying to hold Steph down, and Draymond purposefully tried to ignite that rivalry, understanding Steph needed to get over that little bro syndrome to surpass him. So that was deep. That was deep and dope psychologically from Draymond, because that's how I read it as well. I always read that Chris Paul didn't really like Steph. It was just phony. It just came off as phony, and I saw it progress to where it was just transparent hate. But then the ironic thing is after he explained him doing that, it kind of seemed like LeBron is doing the same thing with Draymond currently.
To me they're not, you know, on the same level. So I don't know. I mean, I guess, like, is Dre gonna get, I'm trying to think, like, does he think like, oh, if I beat him, then like I've beaten him?
You're right. They're not on the same level. You're right. And Draymond, he was like, look, LeBron and I know, because he started to talk about their relationship. And he was like, look, he knows once we get on the court, I'm going to try and rip his face off. And we know Draymond isn't going to go easy. But there is an element, I think, that LeBron took from the Jordan playbook. Keep your friends close and your enemies closer, right? And Draymond is a guy that he has to match up with time and time again in the playoffs. And you don't think it helps a little bit that he's team clutch and they have a personal relationship? There's just not that same. Draymond can claim it's that same competitive edge, but you lose it once you establish a true friendship. And that's what Giannis understands. Remember that Giannis doesn't want to work out with any other stars in the league because he doesn't want to become friends with them. He knows that will weaken his competitive drive against them. And I think there's a little element. You're right. They're not the same. It's not the same Chris Paul, Steph Curry thing, but there's an element of LeBron taking Draymond under his wing, team Nike, team clutch, that's kind of diffusing his venom towards him when they play.
No, I totally see that point. Yeah. I mean, like it's much easier to, like, stomp on somebody's neck if you don't know them than like if you're their friend. Obviously, like you can't just like you know, like you got to be cold-blooded for that.
Right. I think there's a limit where it swings the other way, right? Like if you're so close that you're brothers, then it makes you better, right? Like if you get so close that you're like considered brothers, right? Then all of a sudden you compete harder. But there's that in between space where you're just friends, where it's not as competitive. And yeah, you know, so Draymond, but you know, that was interesting. And then okay, so I guess the heart of it, I think the headline of the interview was the fact that Draymond revealed that it was after the first championship. His agent was BJ Armstrong. They were already planning for KD at that point. So after the 15 championship, they knew Durant was up the year after, and Draymond was negotiating his first max deal, and he took 82, I guess, instead. The max was 96, he took 82. And in the discussion, within the discussion with he and his agent was like, if you take this, then y'all could get KD. And that was long, mind you, before the 3-1 loss. I think it shows, like I said, the kind of facade of Draymond's boastering and cockiness and, you know, all that is, he understood, ultimately, look at his actions. He understands he's like a piece of this bigger part of this bigger scheme, right? And he wanted to get better with it. But I think that what's telling about that is, I think we've heard like KD, remember he took a little less to retain Iguodala and Livingston after year one and all this stuff. And there was all these stories kind of made about KD sacrificing to stay with the Warriors and be a part of the Warriors. When in reality, like the Warriors, a lot of the Warriors, not obviously Steph sacrificed the most, and you know, Under Armour versus Nike, but Draymond sacrificed a lot of money too. And Draymond, I pointed out that when his shooting went downhill as well, I thought in part it was because Durant, he lost all confidence in his shot, because it was like, well, if Steph's not shooting it, Clay's not shooting it, KD's got to shoot it. I can't shoot it. It put another block in his mental to shoot. But the point is Draymond sacrificed for KD to come as well. And ultimately, I don't think KD acknowledged any of the sacrificing of the original core. KD's attitude kind of seemed like, y'all should be happy I'm here. Y'all should be like, be grateful. You know what I mean? That's kind of the vibe I'm picking up. And another thing that I thought was really interesting was he talked about Steve Kerr, how they would forget it was Andre and he would say him and Andre would be the guys that would be like, all right, we got to get K a shot. We got to get KD a shot. Like Steph and Clay have been going off, and you know, and sometimes scores are going to get tunnel vision and whatnot. And he goes, and so sometimes we'd call a play for him and he'd get mad. And he'd be like, don't fucking call a play for me. Don't call a play for me. I don't need that shit. But at the same time, he wanted the ball, right? And you know what that is Durant wanted them to yield to him naturally, right? It doesn't mean the same when it's ordered, when it's obligated, when it's like, hey, Steph, Clay, spread out, give K the ball, ISO at the high elbow, right? It doesn't mean the same as if we're the team. We're like, nah, it's KD, it's your team, and it naturally happened. And I think that's what pissed Durant off about it.
I've been winning so long, it's like alchemy.